Oh, we're rolling. All right. So the biggest difference between the Type 3 and the Type 1 is where the Type 1 you have to go through, you have to be stationary to pump. And so you come in and there's like a process. Everybody kind of has their own rhythm. Come in, brake, switch it, 2-stage down into pump,
Right.
put it in gear, chalk it. You're locked and loaded. You ain't going anywhere. The Type 3, because it's got the hydrostatic pump just in the front of the engine, instead, you come in and you're gonna stop, neutral, brake, and then you just flip this to pump right here.
Okay.
Depending on what you're pumping, normally you will pump in the pressure mode. And that is having the volutes in the pump in series, so it goes through one volute, then goes to the next one, and it spins it up and doubles the pressure. And if you run it in volume, they're both spinning at the same time, and that pumps the volume through. So generally, you will pump in pressure. If you're doing a pump and roll operation, probably the most important thing you can do is you downshift into first gear, so you're not going to go very far. But the sketchiest thing about doing it is because it's working off the engine RPMs will go through and go to it will increase the pressure as you up when you're rolling.
Okay, so it still does have that increase in pressure once you're...
Yeah, it'll bump. So what I typically do when I do it is you set your pressure where you want it to be, and then I'll turn on the relief valve and I'll crank it down real low. So if I increase my RPMs, like if I've got to go up a hill or over a bump or something like that, your relief valve will pick up any RPM adjustments you make and not spike it at the guy at the end of the hose line.
Okay.
So those are kind of...
Let's just say, so we have the bumper line out there. I don't know how, it's what, like 50 feet or something like, or no,
Probably
even
30.
less, 30, right? Yeah. And so it has a combination nozzle on there, I think. So we're doing 100 for the nozzle pressure, and it's only like 9 or something additional.
Yeah, if you're at 60, it's 9, and if you're at 20, it's 1.
Right, okay.
1, or not even that really, because it's per 100 feet. So
do you normally just dial it up on here, probably at 100, just for...
Honestly, I'll probably have it at 80.
At 80, okay.
And so once you get it where you're happy, then you're looking at the guy, he's right there, he's set, you're dialed in. So you're done with this.
Okay, so boom, dialing it up on this. We'll see it on our gauge there. We get it up to 80. Then we have it in neutral.
Yep.
And then what is it that you're doing with the pressure relief?
This is the relief valve, right? So you flip the relief valve on.
Okay.
And then you just turn it down till you see the pressure drop just a scotch. These lights half the time work, half the time don't.
Okay.
And then as soon as you see just a quick drop, then you come back up to where you're happy, to where you're not relieving pressure anymore, and you can hear it.
Yeah.
And then that's where you set it, and you're good at that point. Because when you're driving, and just say you're pumping and rolling, sometimes you do it on the side of a street, but not very often. You're usually in the hills. So if you give it the gas, or throttle up to go over a bump or up a hill or something, just having your relief valve set prevents you from spiking the guy on the end of the line.
Right.
And then that's pretty simple. Unfortunately, the gauges in this thing, the digital gauges don't work, so you still got to watch the gauge outside, the sight gauge.
Okay, right. Yeah, because this, we wouldn't actually know. That thing is way more accurate with the little ball.
Yeah, these things keep getting jacked up, and so they never, I don't know.
Okay. On a normal pump operation, since we're only running like one line, it's not really that important to set this, or do you still
no
mess around
on
with
just this? If you're just out and like you're pumping a progressive hose lay or something, yeah, I don't even bother with it. It's simply, yeah, it's
Okay.
and I don't even know. I don't think that setting the relief valve is part of your like on the things you do.
Right.
But it was just kind of one of those things. Somebody told me a long time ago, like, oh, if you don't want to bone your buddy out at the end of the pump and roll, you can set your relief valve, and then you don't have to worry about it. And it's also, I think, pumping or rolling in first gear, it'll keep it from having to jump on the throttle as much.
Okay.
So there's probably two things that'll screw you when you go to draft. And I did one of them on my test, but I figured it out. And so the first thing, you already mentioned it, was having it in pressure, not volume, when you go to draft. And the second thing is having a loose connection in your train somewhere. And that's what I had the sections snugged up just right.
Yeah.
And I missed, I just didn't quite get it tight enough on the intake when I was doing it. And so I had a couple times, and I would get it, but then I'd lose it. And then I did the stop, back off, you start going through your checklist again. And that's when I grabbed my hydrant wrench and snugged it down. And after that, it was just nails. But, so when you move from out there to out here, you have to hit pump on out here. And then you've got everything except your relief valve out here, but you've got all your pump controls. And
once you flip it on out here, is that then kind of like transferring control to this one? So you couldn't, if I was to try to go back in there to do the a pump and roll, I'd have to turn this off.
Yeah,
and make
you
sure
want to turn.
on,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
So whichever one you plan on using is this one doesn't work if that one's not on though.
Okay, so they both have to be on.
If you want to work from out here, yeah.
It's kind of like doing the intermediate, kind of like, what is that? The pumping gauge on the type ones almost. It's okay, you're just doing the switch instead.
Yep.
Okay.
So so you don't want to not turn that one on and come out here and start doing stuff, because you're gonna be scratching your head. So you flip that guy on, put it in whichever mode, if you want pressure or volume in there. Then you come out here, you flip it on here, and then you tank suction. That's another thing. I always run with my tank suction closed. And so if I'm inside and we're gonna do a pump and roll, I gotta remember to come out here and open it.
Okay.
Otherwise you're hosed, because especially the older engines like this, they all leak. So I always, in those new.
So that's your tank to pump?
Yeah, that's your tank to pump right there.
Okay.
And so
pull to open, push to close. Okay.
So if we got a fire right now, and I'd have to remember, and we were gonna pump and roll, I'd have to remember to come out here and open my tank to pump in order to.
So that's something that you'd have to, right? So we're gonna keep it closed just because it leaks a lot. But if we were gonna do a pump and roll, we have to be able to, stop, come out here, because unfortunately, there's no open tank to pump inside.
Correct.
Right? So it's
Correct.
Stop. You have to come outside.
Yep.
Open it up.
So so and so that's one of the little troubleshoots. If you're inside, okay, we're just gonna pump and roll, and you're in there and you turn the pump on and you start dialing it up and you don't get anything.
Right.
So if you don't have water, you go through your list of things, what could be wrong. And it's really, if you're not hooked to a hydrant, it means that either you've lost prime or your tank to pump's closed.
Gotcha,
and so that's what you'll come out here, pull your tank to pump, and then if that doesn't work, then you work on your prime. And that's a lot of times, even though it's gravity right from the tank going down into the pump, what has happened in the past is that guys that roll with the tank to pump open, if they've got a leaky pump, right, it'll dump the water that's in the pump, and so you'll have air in there and it'll cavitate. So when you first switch over and start pumping, you can actually lose prime by rolling with your pump open all the time if your pump leaks. This one's probably really tight because they just replaced all the plumbing in it.
Yeah, okay.
So this thing was gone for close to a month while they were replacing all the
So
plumbing.
there would be times where, okay, so if they rolled with it open, all the water would leak out of it, or like why is it losing its prime?
So what'll happen, and it should, in theory, just keep as it's dumping out the bottom,
right,
dump out the top. But I've seen it happen before where it's not filling at the same rate that it's dumping for God knows why, and so I've just seen it lose prime before on that. And
so you would actually pull a prime to try to pull it in from the tank in order to get it going?
Yeah.
Okay. And you kind of hear it like spooling up pretty high whenever it's doing it, right? Okay. And then what's the basically like the purpose of the throttle? Just like to get it in a high enough RPM?
So all that does is boost your RPMs. I can't remember what to offhand, but yeah, it'll bump your RPMs up to increase your pressure, because like the hydrostatic pump, right, it's got like fins, and when you're as you crank it up, so it's, you know, if you're at idle, you can still, like, it's not like the Type 1 where at idle you've got 50 pounds. You know, it's basically the fins turn as that's what you're doing with the pump control. You know, we call it the throttle, but it's not. It's really all you're doing is changing the pitch of the fins to grab more water, and that's how you change. That's how you
so technically
pressure.
that thing could be, the revolutions could be going and not providing you with any sort of pressure. Obviously it could be at 0, but the revolutions are whatever, 2,000.
Here, come on in, we'll fire it up and we'll give it a look-see. So turn this guy off, open that up. So okay, so you got pump on, your in pressure, so you'll see it instantly, it spools up to like just under 40 psi, and there you're kicking it in. So all I'm doing right now, so I just got it up to 100, and I'm dropping it down back to 70 now, and then at idle I can still, right, I've still got it at 160 psi. All I'm doing to increase and decrease the pressure right now, because obviously the RPMs aren't changing, all I'm doing is changing the pitch of the fins in the hydrostatic pump right now.
Okay. So that's what, I didn't understand that. So yeah, because we're just still at idle. Right. And the PSI is changing. Just, okay, I got you.
So the other way, right, you can change the pressure by...
Okay, gotcha.
So that right there, see that spike?
Right.
That's why when, so say I'm doing a pump and roll. So right there, Jesus, this thing's tight.
So at idle it's at what?
Right now at idle it's at 100.
At 100.
And it might just be because there's residual water. So you turn, right? So I've turned on the relief valve. See that? Give it gas and it's not spiking your pressure.
Okay.
So that's, and the light's not coming on, so the light's not working real well on the relief
I was going to say, did you get?
Nope, I didn't get the light on that, but that's, I'm used to those being out. So that right there is why you set the relief valve on a pump and roll, because if you got to go over a bump, you're not spiking the guy, and that's the important thing.
Gotcha.
When
Okay.
you're doing it. All right, so then you come out here. So we can increase.
Because is your relief valve still on?
I don't think so. Double check. I thought I turned it off. It is off.
See, I think this is kind of similar to what happened to me.
Yeah. Okay.
So tank pump's open. There we go. So there, yeah, it did it.
Okay.
So you had to pull the prime off of the tank. All right, so we got the Wildland Type 3 pump operation for engineers test 2021. Last time what we did for the test was to go through 3 different scenarios. One was a pump and roll into a draft, and then into pumping a wildland progression. So we're just going to go through, hit it up in the cab. Basically, we're going to pretend go through the motions of that whole scenario of actually driving to the scene, getting the firefighter out, to go into the pump and roll, and then rolling into the other scenarios. So we're going to go and check that out right now. All right, first off, in the cab, make sure we're going to take all of our safety precautions. We're going to buckle up. We have the ignition over here. Battery is already on. We'll let the gauges go through cycling and everything before we start it up. Gauges again. Make sure our air pressure and everything is good. Fuel, all that, all of our numbers are looking great. Okay, so in the test, we ended up driving out to a trail. That's where we ended up engaging in the pump and roll operation. So right now we're just gonna go ahead and pretend brakes off, boom, we're driving to the scene. We get there, we're gonna go ahead and have the firefighter step out. We're at the trail. He's gonna pop out, so you go and grab the line from the bumper. During that time, what I'm going to be doing in here, we can go ahead and turn on our pump. I'm going to start off with the pressure relief valve turned off. We're already at about 80 psi right there on a gauge. I'm going to go ahead, we're going to crank that up to 100. So we've got 100 right there. It's going to be anywhere from like 100 to 106 really for pressure, with a 60 GPM nozzle at the end of like a 30-foot section of 1.5 inches. So after I got that, we got the pump turned on. He can actually start applying water to the fire. We'll go ahead and turn on our pressure relief. I had this crank kind of up high so that it's not going to relieve right away. This light in this engine too is not reliable. It's not going to turn on. So we'll start coming back. We'll see if it'll start relieving for us. Okay, so the light did come on. We'll also see that it'll start relieving here. We can crank that back up just a little ways. We can give it a little bit of gas. You can see that the light flickered on real quick. Even with the increased RPMs, it's relieving. It's staying at 100 for the PSI. All right, so at this time we're ready to do our pump and roll operation, and so we can stick it into first gear, take our parking brake off. I believe we're not allowed to go any faster than 5 miles per hour with the firefighter outside actually fighting a fire. So what's cool about this is with the relief valve on, we have it set at 100. Even if we're going over some rocky terrain, up hills, the pressure relief valve is going to relieve, and it's not going to spike the firefighter's pressure once we're giving it gas. Okay, so boom, that operation is over. We're ready to shut down. They ask you to then go out and help the firefighter pick up the hose. So important thing, what I forgot, is anytime you're getting out of the rig, you want to always chalk your tires. So what I'm also going to do ahead of time is set myself up for success, because I know that I'm going into the drafting operation. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to put this into volume mode. I'm going to turn off my pressure relief because we're not going to need that on the wildland progression. I'm actually really surprised that it allowed me to do that, because you technically have to be below 50 psi on your gauge in order to switch this back and forth from pressure to volume. So we're going to place it in volume for our drafting operation. Pressure relief is turned off. We decrease the pressure, the throttle down to 0. We're going to switch it back into neutral. Parking brakes applied. We're going to go out. We're going to help the firefighter pick up the hose. All right, boom, get it out. Chocks are down. Help the firefighter pick up the hose. Once we get back in, pick up the chocks, we're going to drive to our destination. We're just going to pretend we're going to go to the spot where we're going to do our drafting operation. So drafting operation, we're going to get out. We have everything already set up for our drafting operation inside, like I already mentioned. Once we get to the drafting operation, same thing. We're going to be efficient, economy of motion, getting out of the rig. Coming to our panel here. We're going to go ahead, turn on the panel lights. We also wanted to make sure that this is closed off. And this time I'm ready to go to get my drafting operation done. Back here. So this cap's really hard to get off. Make sure that it's closed. There's a lot of water pressure behind this, so what we could do is tank fill. Pressure's gonna come down. Now we should be able to turn this and get it off. There we go. I'm gonna have a little bit of water that's gonna come out of there. No big deal. Going around, we're going to tighten up all of our caps, make sure that these are well seated on there, close all of our valves, make sure that this is tight, do a 360 around the rig, all the valves are closed, keep tight seal, close. Close. Closed. All right, so now we're ready for our drafting operation. We double check, make sure we're in volume mode, good. Okay, so with everything closed, make sure that that's closed, we're ready to draft. So on the drafting operation, we're going to be pulling a prime here. We want the throttle turned on for when we do this. I'm just going to pretend like we're doing that. So throttle's on, getting ready to pull a prime. We're going to get our compound gauge up to around 50. So as we're pulling, we're going to pull pressure. We'll hear the prime engage. We'll start feeling the hose gain in weight and kind of stiffen up. And then we're going to go ahead and increase our throttle. And we're going to get to 100. Once we're at 100, we're going to pull our tank fill. We're just going to crack it just a little bit. If we crack it too much, we're going to lose our prime. And we're going to see our discharge drop significantly. And then we're going to have to pull a prime again if we don't do that. So, all right, so drafting, we got our tank. We're going to look at our line, make sure we're getting it filled up all the way. We'll have the water dump and everything. Okay, so we got that. That's successful. We're going to shut down the drafting operation. We're going to go into a wildland progressive hose length. So Tom Dave Purple K, we're going to go ahead, throttle down, close our discharge. We can go ahead and we could take it out of pump, but we're going to leave the pump on because we're going right into the pumping operation. That's in place. Sure, get our cap put back on because we do have to open up, take the pump. All right, that's probably gonna be the first thing to do. Pull to open, make sure we're getting water inside of our pump. Otherwise, we're gonna be having a dry pump. We might even have to pull a prime because sometimes the gravity is not enough to get water back into the pump. So we're gonna say 300 feet, 50 feet of elevation. We have a 60 GPM nozzle and combination nozzle. So we got 100 for our nozzle pressure for a combination nozzle. We got 25 for our elevation gain. And then we got about 9 per 100. So it's close to an extra 30. So we're sitting right at 155 for our PSI. Okay, so we'll go ahead, throttle on. What we got to do, put this back into pressure. Not that we can't pump 150 with the volume that we can, so pump back on, throttle back on. Okay, so a few things that I forgot to do in that evolution. Probably is going to end up in losing some points. So after going from, for one, I didn't have my pump turned on outside, which is just dumb. That should probably be the first thing that you do in terms of hitting your panel lights, turning your pump on, doing that fluid economy of motion as you're basically walking back, throwing your chocks down and all that. So I didn't get my pump turned on, so that was my fault. I would have found that out during the scenario with the drafting operation, but since we were just pretending, I wasn't able to find that fix. But that's probably when I found that instead of the pumping operation for the wildland hose progression. And then after the drafting operation, I forgot to come back in here and switch from volume to our pressure for the hose progression. It's much easier for this thing. It seemed like just messing around with it that I was able to pump up to that 150 psi after switching it from volume to pressure. It didn't seem like the engine was working as hard, needed as many RPMs to get it up to that 150. So 2 big mistakes. I'm not sure if those are, I don't think those are critical fails or anything, but the important thing is that you found out, you problem solve, use critical thinking in order to determine what was the issue.